fine.
Anastasia.
Anniről sőt? Sőt.
זה לא מחובר. זה לא מחובר. לא מחובר.
איך אני מעבירה את
יופי, זה עובד.
עם מחבר?
עם מחבר או עם מחסים. יופי. זה עובד? Okay. We're good to go after all the technical corrections and issues. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to our last panel before our concluding roundtable. So please stay with us for this one and the next one. As in previous panels, we'll just go one by one, the lectures, and open the session for questions at the end. And this session will focus on archives in exile. And our first speaker will be Anastasia Glazanova, with whom we had the pleasure of working with as part of the inter-university program in Russian Ethiopian Studies. So Anastasia Glazanova works at the Central Archive for the History of the Jewish People in Jerusalem, now is at the National Library, and where she heads the East European Department and of the collections and oversees digitalization projects. And additionally, she coordinates online documentary collections, the JDoc, documenting the USSR policies towards its Jewish citizens, and Zemela, online Soviet Jewish e-documents. And her talk today is a home for Jewish archives, the history and the current activities of the Central Archives for the History of the Jewish People.
Hello? Great, thank you. Hello? I will try. Okay. Hi. Thank you for having me. I will present my institution, the Central Archives for the History of the Jewish People, which is, well, as you know, probably our institution is what is historical archives in, say, Russia or any other country. So the National Archives would be the state archives, Archeon Medina, about which Noah talked yesterday, and we are the historical archive, and we represent not a state, but a people, Jewish people. So our institution was founded in 1939 in Jerusalem at Mount Scopus. Yeah, this is the picture of the Mount Scopus in its early years. It had slightly different name. It was at first the institution, archive of the university, of the Historical Society of the university, and later it became an independent institution. So we were independent for many years until 2013, when we joined the National Library of Israel. At first, this is not a complete merger, but we are affiliated institution, so to say. But at first we joined our catalogs, and our catalog is integrated into the catalog of the National Library. And later on we moved together in the same building. It was in late September this year. So we are more close now with the National Library, and everybody is invited to visit us there. I will be very glad to have you. So the initial concept is related to this nice old man, Eugen Taubler, who was chief archivist at a certain point in Israel, but he began his career in Germany. And all of our founding members were from Germany. Daniel Cohen, our first director, Josef Meisel, another director of the Central Archives. So partly for this reason, the initial focus was already on Germany. And the idea that the legacy, the heritage of the Jewish communities in Germany, which were left without heirs, need to be safeguarded, was very strong, of course. It's already before the Holocaust, it was clear that this needs to be done, and this project was realized after the war, partially facilitated by the process of restitution of the materials. So the materials, the backbone of our collection are the materials from Germany that were preserved in so-called Gesamtarchiv in Berlin, which was founded in 1903 by Taubler, and it has gathered historical community archives of various communities in Germany. And after the war, we received most of its collection that survived. So in a decade, we received materials from about 800 communities in Germany. And, well, I need to clarify that, let's say, we have, from many of these communities, we have like 1, 2, or just few files or documents even. So it doesn't mean that we have really communal archives for all these communities, but part of them, several hundreds, are indeed represent an archive. So we can say that this is maybe not full, but communal archive of a certain community. So Alex Bein was an important figure in this field, and here we have the stamp of Gesamtarchiv, which was crossed out by the Nazis. Okay. So communities are the center of our activities, and I have some, this is the map that represents the countries from which we have materials. So we started with Germany, and in later decades we received materials from all these countries. From parts of them we have a lot of material from, and others just a little, but nevertheless, this is the whole picture. Okay, so let me go just, yeah. In other crucial parts of our focus are national and international Jewish organizations, private collections, and we also do surveys in non-Jewish archives worldwide. And already in the 50s, we started to copy from various archives abroad. And of course, at first these were microfilm copies. Today we do digitization in many institutions, and I will talk about this later. So, from 50s to 70s, we received our most famous collection, the Archive of the Jewish Community of Vienna, which was later reclaimed back by the next generation of the community, who decided that they want to have it back, but this did not happen. Our institution won the process in the Supreme Court of Israel, and it stayed with us. This is one of our most important collections, and I will talk about it later on more. Regarding the organizations, we have collections of very important Jewish organizations like ORT, Jewish Colonization Association, OZE, and so on, including photo collections which represent the activities. We have a very big part of our collections are successor organizations collections, which are listed here. And well, let's say the basis that I talked about, the German collections, they occupy around 1,000 boxes, large and small. And here you can see that these 5 collections, they are almost 2,700 boxes. And these are collections of Jewish Restitution Successor Organization, IRSO, Jewish Trust Corporation, and its French branch, Claims Conference, United Restitution Organization, and Bureau d'Exposition Mobilière, the French organization that dealt with restitutions. So successor organizations, they mostly worked with claims for property lost during the Holocaust. And these collections contain a lot of applications for these restitutions. Okay, yeah. So I'm getting back to Vienna, and I would say right now I finished with the overview of our history, and I will now talk about our more recent activities. So one of them was a joint project with MyHeritage, which cataloged and digitized all the immigrant applications that are in the Vienna collection. These are about, they are usually filled in 2 copies, but in total they are 70,000 questionnaires that Jews filled if they wanted to escape from Vienna in the time of Anschluss. So this is a very valuable information for genealogical research. These questionnaires list family members, relatives, friends abroad with addresses, dates of birth, and so on and so forth. So in the frame of this project, we cataloged each of these applications. They are all digitized. and they are open online for access from home, from anywhere. Though MyHeritage, I think, still charges, you have to be to pay for subscriptions to be able to access these. But with us, it's open access. Okay, so this is how it looks in the catalog. Another project that I personally worked on is the partnership with Eurosha database, which is a database that lists the collections with Jewish-related materials in Europe. So they surveyed many collections, and their view is that this is a major help for researchers who research Jewish history. And so for them, we surveyed collections in Baltic states and in Georgia. In Baltic states, we did collection level descriptions for about 700, 800 collections. And the Georgian project was much smaller, but nonetheless, it is unique because I think before there were no such initiatives to work in Jewish history in Georgia. So this is also available online on the Yerusha website. Okay, so as part of our current activities, we are active in Latin America. For now in 4 countries, and few more will join this activity soon. So what we do, we instruct the communities, Jewish communities, on how to organize and catalog and digitize their materials. So we're mostly giving, in this case, guidance to these communities, and if they need, we also have resources to finance part of this work. So we view this as a very important activity, which we very much want to widen, and we do similar things in other places. For instance, we have a project of this kind, I could say, in Russia, which digitizes the archive of the St. Petersburg Institute for Jewish Studies. Though it's a bit different, but we also guided them and sent their person who worked on the catalog, and now they continue to digitize and send us copies. Okay, another important, quite big project which started in 2022, digitization of the records of Jewish communities in Bavaria. In partnership with the government of Bavaria, we have, as I mentioned, we received many archives of the communities after the war, and among them there were about 200 communities in Bavaria. So now we are working on digitizing them all. It is a 5-year project, quite a big one, and these copies will be available, of course, both by us and by our Bavarian partners. Yeah, private collections. Relatively big project lately, which we work on, is Enid Woodman collection on history of the Zionist/Jewish movement in and on behalf of the Jews of the Soviet Union. This is the title that she gave to her collection. So she, Enid Woodman, has been an activist for Soviet Jews for many years. She is very known and among former refuseniks and dissidents, and she was a great help, and she's a very warm person, and many of them are still in touch with her. So from the beginning she understood the importance of gathering the evidence of historical evidence of this process. So she assembled an archive which now occupies 42 boxes, and it contains different materials. I think some of, for me, the most interesting ones are probably the trip reports of people from the West who visited the Soviet refuseniks in the USSR and then wrote detailed reports on how this was and how they visited them at home and so on and so forth. There are a lot of photographs also, and here you can see Jane Fonda, who welcomes Ida Nudel at Ben Gurion Airport in '87. So this project goes like this. Since we have, according to the contract, we need to finish working on this collection in a certain amount of time, we have 3 persons who work on this. And as soon as few boxes are ready, we send them out for digitization, and which is sponsored by Wendy Museum in Los Angeles, a museum which deals with Cold War period with the focus on Eastern Europe and USSR. Okay, so yeah, I will tell about a couple of projects we did in Ukraine. The first one started just before the pandemic of COVID, when we established contact with Chesed Besht organization in Khmelnytsky. Chesed, as you probably know, the organizations sponsored mostly by Claims Conferences and GDC, which helps Jewish communities in various countries, most of the former Soviet Union. So I reached out to several organizations of this kind in the former Soviet Union, and one got back to me, and they were very interested in cataloging and digitizing the archive. So we moved forward with this, and it was a challenging project because at that point I couldn't go there, and for instance, as a result of this, I didn't know that all the materials they have are bound in volumes. And when we understood that we don't have the partner who was supposed to fund the digitization, I reached out to a local firm, which is actually a branch of a German firm, who digitizes the documents. And they work with scanners with feeders, so they cannot process something which is a volume. And we had to unbind all these volumes and then bind them back, which was a bit expensive. And then the war broke out, and this is was mentioned yesterday. The archive of Secret Service of Ukraine in Chernihiv, which was bombed and burned by Russians. And well, the head of this company we hired to do digitization went to war, and well, there were several delays, but in the end, we're very glad that this project was realized, because this is what we really see as very important work that we do. So we compiled a list of 327 archival files, and we chose to digitize out of them 207 And in the result, we have an archive of 65,000 frames, which have correspondence, social help reports, and the reports on the various projects of this organization. So, and of course, we cannot open it online now because it has huge amount of personal information, sensitive information, medical records, and so on. So this is indeed a project which safeguards Jewish history post USSR Jewish history in Ukraine, and maybe these records will be available like in 50 years or maybe more, though we could give access to research on certain conditions. This is what we think is important to do, and especially, well, I mentioned that I mentioned that this was only one institution which got back to me regarding cataloging and digitizing the collection, because actually in these countries most of the documentation is destroyed after 5 years. They don't keep records because legislation well, it's not mandatory, but you have to keep records for 5 years and then you can destroy them. And they prefer to destroy them because then you don't have problems with unauthorized access, and you can feel safer in this respect. So what is happening now that we lose all the future Jewish heritage is being lost because of this legislation, and it's happening, as far as I know, at least in Russia, in Ukraine, in Armenia, in Kazakhstan, and in Belarus, probably in other countries as well. So what I showed in the beginning, that we have records of Jewish organizations. For our time, we won't have them, more or less, unless, I don't know, we try to work harder. And I will speak, well, another big project which is happening now is in partnership with Babi Yar Memorial Center. We raised funds from 3 different donors, and we are now working with Babi Yar in 6 cities. Zhytomyr, Kyiv, Khmelnytsky, Chernivtsi, and Odessa, and we are very much looking forward to widen this activity. Babi Yar has a very good and reliable infrastructure for this work, and also nice information system. So, well, here you see the results of our work. For now, we are supposed to digitize this year 3 million frames, and for now we digitized 502 records, which in total give us 172,000 frames. So we mostly wish to digitize documents from 19th century because this allows, because this is our institution's focus historically. This is what we do. We are less in the field of Shoah. We're less. This is our forte, 19th century material for the researchers and for the wide public. So, yeah, we harvest. What is new for me in this project is that we usually, digitization projects, in my case, involve external drives with scans and Excel tables, and I have like 1 petabyte of these drives around my desk at work. So it's a huge amount of external drives with scans. But in this case, we harvest metadata and scans directly from the server of Babiyar, and we create, with a script, we create table which is in the format what we need for our system, which is Ex Libris Alma, and then we upload it to our system, rename the scans for our long-term preservation storage, Rosetta, and upload the scans. So it works very smoothly, and I'm very glad that well, we found this solution, and we don't have to send external drives by post, which happens, still happens a lot. For instance, with Bavaria project and so on. Okay, so to conclude, I would probably say 2 things. I have some time? Yeah?
2, 3.
Okay. So of course, well, our aim is to give access to material. We are inside the National Library Catalog, which means we are not independent, and we cannot act on our own in this. National Library has a legal department, and we are constantly struggling with them. They are good, but this is hard. Often we take our own decisions, and so we are like courageous. We are not afraid of our legal department, but still we try to be accurate. So now and this is divided in, of course there is materials which we cannot show to anyone for the reasons that I mentioned, personal data, but in general all other material is accessible in the building, so the scans can be seen in the building. All the material older than 140 years can be accessed from home. We are now changing it to 100 instead of 140. And so, well, I'm optimistic that we will be able to give access to more and more material from home to our users, because I think this is how it should be, and this is what we should do. So, of course, still personal information is a big consideration, also copyright and so on, but this is how we're working, and this is our highest priority, though it requires a lot of work, and we don't have a lot of resources exactly for this. We have a lot of catalogers, but we don't have many specialists in copyright issues and so on. This is one thing. And the second thing is that it was mentioned in one of our days here earlier that usually we work in the places where we have access and where it is easy. Yeah, right. We didn't do copying in Russia for many years now because it's so expensive, and we can copy elsewhere for much more material for this money. Or like director in a certain institution is not nice and doesn't want to cooperate, or things like that. So when we have a way to do things, we do it. And of course, I think it's right in a way, but on the other hand, sometimes we need to think strategically. For instance, as with the case of destroying of the documents of Jewish organizations, maybe we have to be more proactive and map the risk zones and do some work there, especially because this is difficult, and these are endangered archives, endangered materials. So we need to strike a balance between what is easy and gives great results quickly and what is difficult and nevertheless should be done. Yeah? Okay, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. Really, what the amount of materials and records that came from communities in Eastern Europe, 150 years old, end of the 19th century, all the birth and death records of Jewish communities that they were just scanning and collecting and bringing to Israel. So for those interested in that, there's also a great place to get those materials instead of traveling to the home archive, which has advantages and disadvantages, but okay. Our next speaker is Nikita Lomacki, and he is a historian and archivist. He graduated from Moscow State University and defended his doctoral thesis on medieval history. He's also an author who conducted researches on climate history, on peculiarities of remembrance of Soviet past, of politics of history, and he has curated different exhibitions on the history of 20th century and digital projects on the publication of historical sources. And over the last 10 years, since 2013, he has worked in the International Memorial Organization. And since 2018, he actually headed the digitization of the Archive of International Memorial. And since May 2022, when he left Russia, he continued work on the Archive of Memorial with support of the University of Bremen and University of Jena, where he is now located. And indeed, his talk today will be on transformation of the memorial archives with digital Yehudi Memoir work.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to join the thanks to Vera for invitation, to Mayan, Yasmin for all the support. And I would say I'm deeply touched by the discussions and also by the atmosphere in which we are here now, and which atmosphere affects the discussion very deeply, and that's very unusual, very strange, and very, in some kinds of inspiring and deepening, I think, of reflection about the archives. So thank you very much. What came next will be a little bit of mourning, but I won't expect you to take it too serious, but maybe there will be some things which is interesting to discuss. First of all, crisis has always been part of everyday life for Memorial and more generally for NGO in Russia. But the events of the last 2 years seem to be changing the state and society more than any time since Perestroika. One of the victims of this shift has been International Memorial, the organization for which I have worked for more than a decade. Not very. Okay, well. From 2018 until recently, I was responsible for the creation of Moscow Memorial Digital Archive. During this time, we have been through a pandemic and a lockdown, the liquidation of the umbrella organization, the dispersion of the collection to secure locations, and the creation of a cloud archive based on contributions from the Moscow team and several civil and academic institutions in the Czech Republic, Germany, and France. The creation of the digital archive is a combination of digitization of paper collection, systematization and description of electronic documents, audio and video collections, merging databases created during 30 years of the Society's work in Moscow. From various points of view, this was a difficult task that changed all the procedures in the archive, from the perception of materials to the interactions with the users. Most of the archive has been digitized and now available from anywhere in the world. But the other side of this recent crisis is that the digital archive is now the only representation of the physical archive.
there is no longer a place in Moscow that one can publicly call the archive. No place where one can come to work with the documents, to communicate with archivists and other researchers, or to donate personal documents to the archive. The question then is whether the digital archive, deprived of its physical component, can retain the meanings originally embedded in it. Or more broadly, can an information system replace the archive as a place of memory? I will present my thoughts on this question a little later, but first I would like to briefly recall what the archives of the various memorials are or were, and what their role is in the Russian landscape of memory. That's okay. Okay. The memorial movement was initiated by a group of activists in the summer and autumn of 1987 on the wave of perestroika. The idea was to collect signatures in support of the construction of a monument to the victims of political repressions in Moscow. By communicating with opinion leaders and recruiting professional historians to the team, the group developed a broader vision of the problem of preserving the memory of political repression. In addition to the monument itself, a documentation center combining an archive, a museum, and a library should be established. This program was later, it's a little bit mess, later adopted to varying degrees in many other cities in the USSR and abroad. The ideology of the archive at the time can be understood from the publications of Arseny Roginsky, the intellectual and later formal leader of the movement. It was inherited from the experience of the editors of the underground historical journal Pamять, Memory, that's the team, a samizdat publication of the 1970s. The main thesis, and this will sound familiar to everybody here, the state archives are closed. The documents they contain do not represent the truth because they were falsified at the stage of its creation. So they cannot tell the true story of the terror. Who can? Only the family archives and private memory. The opening of the archives in the early 90s did not fundamentally change this position. It was too brief and incomplete. Decisions by special commissions and even decrees of the President of the Russian Federation on the transfer of archives from the FSB to public archives were sabotaged by FSB personnel and by the facts of life. For example, public archives were physically unable to accept new holdings from FSB archives because they did not have enough storage space. As a result, most of the documents on the history of political terror remained in the FSB archives, and access to them has been severely restricted since the mid-90s. This meant that not only researchers, but also many families of victims of political terror who had been charged with criminal or administrative offenses were never able to gain access to the documents. In this context, the appeal made by Memorial in the early years is very understandable. It is this: you should tell us about your repressed relatives. Tell us what information and documents you have in your families and what you know personally. All information is useful. It's the only way to restore history and achieve justice. Justice usually used to mean rehabilitation, restoration of history, compensation, and occasionally illustrations. There was a very broad social response. Very broad social response to this call. In major cities, tens of thousands of people came to reception centers organized by volunteers and took part in special regular commemorative events, Weeks of Conscience. At these events, relatives of the oppressed supplemented each other's information and exchanged knowledge. The archives of Memorial were enriched with questionnaires, letters, memoirs, and copies of documents. That's one of the questionnaires. Of course, unfortunately, it's not very good to see. The extent of these collections was largely determined by activities of the Memorial's members and their organization. This explains the seemingly surprising fact that the geography of the existing collections does not correspond at all to the geography of the largest cities. For example, the largest collection were formed in Moscow, which unsurprisingly in St. Petersburg, and then Rязань, Voronezh, Perm, and Krasnoyarsk. At the same time, the collection in many other large Russian cities were insignificant. For example, Nizhny Novgorod, Samara, Saratov, Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, and so on. Memorials, early archives are very close to the archives of identity or community archives described by, for example, Blowen and Rosenberg. These terms generally refer to the archives associated with newly realized and constructed identities and focus on documenting the historical narrative associated with that identity. In the case of memorial, this narrative was the narrative of the victims of political repressions. And this also makes the archive somewhat similar to what was defined as counter-archive. In the early 90s, this narrative was categorized by more than a modest understanding of the real mechanisms of state terror and a lack of basic analytical categories. Even today, it's difficult to say who are the victims and who are the perpetrators. Rehabilitation legislation is still controversial, and the lack of knowledge leads to controversial decisions by also official commissions. Questions of what exactly is the repression and what period of individual's life should be covered by the archive, for example, in early questionnaires and databases weren't intended to trace a person's life and socialization after the camps. So these questions have remained unresolved. In the 90s, people identified themselves as the victims, often without regard to the actual nature of allegations. The desire to join the group of victims of the regime and to add their personal story to the new historical narrative independent of the state often led to some oddities. A typical case is the story of Nina Gnevkovskaya. It came to light when comparing the finding aids of the Moscow Memorial Archives of the dissident movement and the Archive of History of the Gulag. The Archive of the History of the Gulag kept several pieces of paper, an application to join the society, and a questionnaire. According to these documents, Gnevkovskaya was arrested in 1950 for reading and keeping wrong magazines. And she was in the camps until 1953. She told the story to Memorial in the late 80s. What she didn't say was that in the 70s, investigator Nina Gnevkovskaya was one of the most determined opponents of the dissident movement and the organizer of many trials against prominent human rights activists. A closer look at her biography reveals new details. Gnevkovskaya was arrested on the personal order of Lavrentiy Beria, who courted her and supposedly never won her favor. She appeared on television in the 2000s to denounce contemporary human rights activists, including Memorial. But for Memorial Archives, she's just another victim of the regime. She writes that she wanted to join the Memorial. But the stories of deliberate silence and selective reporting are nothing compared to the more widespread problem, the complete lack of documentation and information about the repressed. Families often have only extremely uninformative rehabilitation certificates from the 1950s and false death certificates, stating, for example, that the person had died of illness in the camps in the 40s, when in fact they had been condemned and shot in 1937. That's one of the examples. That's the death certificate for one person from different time with different dates of death and different reasons of death. This extremely poor documentary heritage was accompanied by silence or family legends, which sometimes has little to do with the reality. The documents donated to the memorial thus represented not only the fate of the oppressed, but also the extent of public ignorance of the history of repression. In the 90s and 2000s, the Memorial Archive have evolved. Firstly, the initial gathering and systematization of information was replaced by more systematic work on document collection. This work was carried out by dissidents and press. sometimes on their own, sometimes with the help of Memorial, which became the main center of expertise for the search of relatives. The staff of many branches of the society gave advice on which documents to collect, how to formulate requests to the archives, which of them could be useful. People brought the documents they received from the archives to Memorial and filled the dossiers about themselves or their relatives. In this way, layer by layer, edition by edition, collections of personal files were built up. Secondly, the Memorial became the center of research community. Expeditions, museum or archaeological, years of archival work and interviews with the victims' relatives formed the researchers' own collections. Sooner or later, these collections also found their way into the archives and museums of Memorial. Also, the personal documents of journalists, human rights activists, and dissidents enriched the archive. Thirdly, the human rights orientation of some parts of society has made it possible to create a kind of transitional justice archive. This includes claims for compensation, both from successors of Soviet states agencies and, for example, from the German government, from former Eastern workers. Legal disputes and lawsuits on issues of social services and access to archives. In this way, by the mid-90s, the archives of Memorial were already becoming more complex collections of documents that brought together different points of view. In a sense, there was an evolution from the archive of identity to a more classical archive, reflecting the complexity and multifaceted dynamics of Soviet society. At the same time, in the public consciousness, Memorial has always been and remains a public center for the identity of victims of Soviet repressions. This distinguishes it from other similar organizations and from state museums. Here are some numbers to give you an idea of the digitization process and the content of the Moscow archive. So Moscow archive is divided in two branches. One, history of the Gulag till 1953, and the other, everything what is later. The history of Gulag is around 80 or 90% digitized. The later, unfortunately, only 10. It depends on the status and so how the documents were processed in different branches. In total, it's more than 1,600,000 files. Some of them are one page, one frame. How nice to translate it. Other are multi-page per day, so I can't say how many pages are digitized, but I think it's not less. So what's inside? One of the biggest one is personal files of repressed. I told you before about it. It's around 30,000 units, and in this case, units mean dela. The other is a font of memoirs. It's around 1,000 of memoirs. Correspondence with former forced laborers, a lot, you see. Audio and video testimonies, also a lot. Family and personal archives. Okay, here I just gathered the collection because it's quite irrelevant to say how much dela there is inside. Archives of human rights and dissidents organizations, and the total in terms of dela, we have more than 372. What's published? It's also interesting. So we published. You see the comparison. So around 60 fonts, description of fonts should be published. Much more files should be published later. So we will publish soon the records of the documents, and what's I think interesting for this audience, the records of persons mentioned in the personal fonts, and this is quite useful tool to work with the collection, because, for example, you can look for the nationality which was mentioned in the documents. The marginalization and gradual dismantling of the memorial began in the immediate after the annexation of Crimea. The introduction of the foreign law, agents law, coincided with powerful anti-war protest in 2014. Memorial human Rights Center was one of the first to be recognized as a foreign agent and then followed by International Memorial in 2016. Increased pressure on foreign agents coincided with pressure on individual activists, such as the trial of Yuri Dmitriev, and an attack by right-wing organization and FSB on Memorial School competition. In 2019, International Memorial was forced to pay a record fine for violating the law on foreign agent. Therefore, the beginning of the process of liquidation of the memorial in 2021 was not unexpected. Under the threat of confiscation of the building in Moscow, the archives were moved to safer location, where digitization could continue. As the war with Ukraine began, we negotiated the relocation of some of archival staff to Europe and organized grants for them. The result was a structure that still works today. Some archivists continue to digitize documents in Moscow, while the other part describes the scanned material and prepares it for publication from Europe. The main publication site is Archive Memoru. It was in the first slide. It's an index to the archive to which the possibility of downloading files will be added in a few months. Communication is by email only. Some people are allowed to come to the building in Moscow that remains at memorial disposal, but the archive collection itself is no longer there. The archive has thus become something as a sort of a dark store, represented externally only by a website. Users can download published documents or request materials that have been decided not to publish for various reasons. However, this change has long-term consequences for the memorial community that are still difficult to assess. The virtualization of the archives leads to a loss of connection with specific people, buildings, and communities that collected particular archives. For the external user, before the patchwork of dozens of memorial websites represented the complicated geography and structure of Memorial Society. But after the repression and liquidation of many organizations, it has lost its representative role. So now the mosaic doesn't not help to get information. For most people, and for donors too, it is much easier to go to one memorial website and to find out about the current situation than to try to piece together the whole picture with dozens of websites of former organizations. In this way, the retreat of physical archives and communities into the shadows should encourage a process of unification and integration in order to save the legacy. But it's difficult to do, both for substantive and subjective reasons. Another important consequence of virtualization is the cognitive deadlock caused by the lack of understanding of our own online audience. Archives and information projects are becoming the main output of both those who have stayed in Russia and those who have moved away, but for whom it's been done. The real connection with the audience has been replaced by ad hoc online interaction. And we still have no idea who are this audience. And the third, perhaps the most important aspect of virtualization is the loss of the aura of authenticity of the documents, of the archives, of the society itself. In our case, it relied on the archive building as a place of memory and the experience that you can get only in the physical archive. I would say that there are three main levels of this experience. First of all, the importance of the context. When you can see the font itself, you understand better where it comes from, so you understand it much better. Of course, this can be somehow compensated by electronic finding aids, but we all know that they are not working well. I think everyone knows the situation where you come to a library to look for a book in the electronic catalog and leave with dozens more after checking the nearby shelves, and here there is no way to see the nearby shelves. Second, the importance of experience of seeing a document in a special place. Few can deny that a love of the archives and documents is first and foremost a love of the physical experience of documents and archives. The physical space constructs the feeling of the archive and legitimates the copies, given in the aura of originals. And the next one is the community. The community of researchers and community of contributors are rarely described as a part of the archive. However, in the case of identity archives, these communities should be considered as such because they are communities of like-minded people who generally share the ideas about the particular identity. The reading room of the archive is also a point of connection between these communities, and if connection can be made physically, it remains questionable, whatever it can be made at all. There is no doubt that the majority of users today access and use digital versions of archives regardless of these considerations. In some way, we use electronic library catalogs in our daily lives. The further we go, the more we download the book we need on computer or read it in the internet. The crucial factor, however, remains the theoretical possibility of going to a library or to an archive. This possibility distinguishes the website of libraries, museums, and archives from, for example, Wikipedia, where the documents can also be published, and the infinite number of other sites where the researcher can find the information he or she needs. Depriving the digital archive of this possibility disconnects it from the community, which can be fatal for a community archive. What to do about it? As I said, I have more questions than answers, but still there is some hope. One of the ideas is to construct the websites to include in a more inclusive way, to invite the users to comment on the documents. But here it came to another cons to this concept. The main problem is the level of discussion in the context. If the level of individual documents, it will get lost in the small details. If it's a higher level, it requires careful moderation, which is time-consuming thing. Then the seminars, online and offline. This always was a strong point of Memorial. In the past, seminars were used to sort out and describe collections, to digitize them, to discuss the content of investigation case, or the peculiarities of certain types of documents. Seminars devoted to the archive are now organized as part of school competition or regional presentations. But as with community moderation, this is a job that requires extra hands and cannot be provided by the archive itself. Then cooperation with other venues and institutions. This is where I see real potential. The digital archive could be partially reproduced in several places, based on memorial organizations, museums, archives, and libraries. And these offices could act as community meeting places and as place of acquisition. And the last thing which really inspired me for this idea is the technology of paper backups. The idea is to print out with a very high resolution, it's 1200 dpi, miniatures of the documents on a special archival paper, so it can be stored for hundreds of years without headache with format recognitions, without the headache with outdated ways of recording and reading devices. And it also gives you a way of feeling that this is a real collections, and this can be spread among the offices. So coming to conclusions. The Memorial Archive is a special case of community archive. While building a place in the physical sense tends to create a community by itself, in a virtual environment, maintaining a community requires a lot of time and effort. And this effort is not directly related to the archives, activities of the archive. In this sense, the prospect of Moscow Memorial Archive existing in a purely digital form is doubtful, despite the obvious successes and the growing demand for the archive now. A memory information system needs a physical place that it represents. These places must be accessible to a large community, and they must present the collection in a physical and an authentic way, as authentic way as possible. And the second is about the dynamics of digital and physical. To remember, in the age of digitization, we are investing heavily in the digitization of collections. We expect digitization to enable a new level of material understanding and processing. This is partly true. But from my point of view, after digitization, we will return to the physical archive and place, because it is the materiality of the archive what keeps it relevant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikita. And it brings us back to the opening remarks of Professor Rachamimov about the feel of paper and the smell of the archive. I'm sure you have many questions, but we're going to hear Ilya first. Ilya Vinyakhin is a historian of Soviet culture, education designer and journalist. For 15 years, he has been studying Stalinist culture and subjectivity. He wrote an ebook entitled "The Master's Inkwell," a Soviet writer inside the Great Purge, and he's also the co-founder of Projta, a collaborative online archive and a research center of Soviet diaries and eco-documents. He has taught Soviet culture at the High School of Economics in Moscow and Moscow School of Social and Economic Sciences. And since the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he started writing features on people and ideas that made this war possible. For the piece on Russian political technologist Timofey Sergeytsev, he received an Independent Journalist Prize of the Collegia, and currently he's holding a research position at Russian Independent Media Archive, a joint initiative by Bard College and PEN America, and writing a book on the ideology of Putinism. And Ilya's lecture today will be preservation of the legacy of independent journalism through the Russian Independent Media Archive.
I would like to start with saying a huge thank you for all the organizers, to Yasmin, Mayan, and Vera, and it's a great pleasure to be here just and to put the project that I'm working on in a more theoretical context, just and find some inspiration and ideas, and then conversation with the colleagues. So my approach before was, say, much more practical, so I'll try to share the status of what we're doing and why we're doing that, and I'll be happy to hear comments and considerations. Second. Okay, so to start with, I'll need to describe just in a few words the state of media censorship in Russia if you just don't know well about it. So just according to like some recent report by JX Fund, so at least 1,800 journalists left Russia after the start of the full-scale invasion, and there's like no less than 150 media blocked in Russia, and so this the number of outlets blocked is growing. And about 300 journalists declared foreign agents, and so they are just facing not only the administrative cases but criminal ones. So because so I would say that so this censorship started immediately after the start of the full-scale invasion and was planned and designed as one of these ideological measures to make the invasion and full-scale war possible. So we see some attempts to resist the censorship from within the country, but still, so I would say that now, just after the 2 years of the war going on, we can just be sure that the most part of this efforts to resist censorship are now outside of Russia. And still, surprisingly, Russian independent media is a booming sphere. So just once again, here I'm showing the figures from this report from GX Fund, that's called Sustaining Independence, Current State of Russian Media in Exile. So we see that, so they counted like 34 new media which appeared, so, and we see that the nature of this media changed a lot, so we see a lot of minor teams of journalists working together, and so they're trying to find new ways of reaching the audience through social media, through YouTube channels, just so they are getting very often they get rid of the traditional platforms like websites, because once again they are blocked, and so they are not as effective as reaching the audience as other means. And so we still see that this independent media can reach from 69% of the adult Russian population, just in spite of all the efforts to block them and to limit their access. So, just that is the situation with the Russian media, but what is the point of the Russian Independent Media Archive, and so how we can be part of this process of resisting the media censorship. So, we were just officially launched in April of 2023, so we are just supported and funded by Gagarin Center at Bard College, and by PEN America, with just collaboration with the Internet Archive and the Mass Media Defense Center. And so just that's one of the moments that I had during this workshop. Yeah, so just it is just so maybe at some moment it was more implicit than explicit, but we absolutely had our points of inspiration, because we had a rationale behind starting this project. So, and we can say that just we somehow following the path of this historical archive of Russian immigration, because we kind of similar with them with the same intuition of the importance of preserving of the different media existing and connecting this now just Russian diaspora in immigration. And for us, it was just for many years, it was very important to have this example of a memorial society at our just eyes, because I believe that was the part of thing that we were taught. It is the importance of preservation of the evidences, and just the idea of keeping the record of private histories. Because when we start thinking about our mission, so we thought that the independent media still, as I have shown on the previous slides, remain to be one of the most functional actors in the Russian civil society. And so we now see that independent journalists manage to get in contact with many people, still with this people participating in war in Ukraine, people resisting the state pressure within the country. And so we feel that that is one of the easiest way to approach the evidences and the legacy of these people throughout the last 20 years. So, just what do we do? So we do, just to state what we do, just very simply, we just preserve the work of Russian independent journalists since the year 2000, trying to just counteract the censorship and the pressure of the state. And so here, just you can see on the slide, so that was the it is a PDF of Novaya Gazeta that was blurred because of the demands of the Roskomnadzor, so the censorship body just in Russia. So that was the short moment when Novaya Gazeta was aspiring to keep on working inside Russia and obeying to the legal restrictions, but it just they soon realized that it's not possible. And here just you see the blurred, the important piece of Elena Kostychenko, that is her just piece of her trip to Kherson in the first weeks of the war in Ukraine. So, just the first thing, it is like the most important one, and just a simple goal, it is just to preserve everything that we can. But still, we see the other goals. It is, so our idea is that we need to use the potential of data, because we just now see that especially it's happening in the sphere of journalism. So there's many more ways of approaching data and extracting information from data sets. And so we want to be the part of this trend. And just another thing that we have, it is just the idea of scaling. So we think, we perceive our work as the work of creating the tools that we will be happy to share with other teams and organizations. So what we have done so far, so we have collected 55 media outlets and like 3.5 million documents. So you can just go visit our website. It's rima.media. It is up and running, so and you can go there and search the information that you need. So just for the moment, you can see that we are like more inspired by Google search than by the classical archive, because just at that moment we believe that our basic task it is just to provide the access to the information and to work with the search queries from our visitors so that they can quickly find what they're looking for. We also, just for the sake of just facilitating the connection between Russian journalists and just media in Europe and the US, we use the just machine translation to translate all 3 million and a half articles that we have, and so it gives the possibility for a full text English search for all the journalists who are interested in getting more context on the Russian society and politics. And we also are happy to provide journalists and scholars with the data sets on demand. So there's an just a questionnaire that anyone can fill in, and we will provide the data sets just containing all the just needed outlets, the time span, and the keywords that the researcher or journalist is interested to. And so now we see that this is just the amount of data sets that we provide is slowly growing, so we provide them for research needs and for educational needs as well. So I mean, they can be used for training, or they can be used just for various educational courses. Then just we see that we have some plans for future development for this very year. So we hope to have by the end of this year 140 media in our collection, and be able to add and transcribe video and audio to the collection, and to add this media that now work in this social media platforms like Telegram and Instagram, because like there's no sense in pretending that they are different types of species, so they're still independent media. And so now we work to improve the quality of search results for queries, and so there's just difficult task for us is to understand what is to be done with the gray zone media, because there's a problem that many influential and very important independent media from the previous decades, they lost their independence and now they are just in the full control of the Russian state, or like in the control of the oligarchs and businessmen who are like affiliated with the state. And so that gives a problem in the sense that we didn't have a legal permission to work with the documents. And so we have started this idea of toolkitization, so just the idea of transforming the archive into a toolkit. So we were able to start a collaboration with a team from Guatemalan media called El Periódico, so because they faced the similar censorship pressure in Guatemala. So the founder of this outlet, Jose Zamora, was put into jail by the government on the premises of economic crime that never happened. But so he was just critical to the political regime in Guatemala, and so that led to the disappearance of the outlet and its archive from the internet, because the editing team was more able to pay for the servers. And so that led to the situation where the archive of El Periódico for more than 30 years disappeared from the web. And so we agreed that we can just share our infrastructure with this team of journalists from Guatemala and collaborate together to provide some funding to start this Central American Independent Media Archive. And we hope to accomplish this task by the end of this year. And so we are looking forward to find the possibilities to scale the project to other countries like Afghanistan or Belarus. But once again, so it's not like that we can shoot them deliberately, because we do not have enough expertise to work in this regions. But we are looking for collaborators and partners who will be willing to use our tools and to share our approach. So we the idea that we share that for free, because our idea is that the infrastructure and tools that we create are of common use. And the thing that we are still thinking about, and just we'll be happy then to discuss it with Nikita, so that we're looking for the ways to see if we can be instrumental in the task of preserving the archives of Russian NGOs and human rights groups, because I would say that the overall goal that we have in mind is not only to preserve the legacy of Russian independent media, but to just be instrumental in preserving the legacy of Russian civil society since the fall of the Soviet Union. And so there's a huge task, and I believe that it can be done by one organization. So I believe that it must be a collaborative task, and we are looking forward to find the better ways to be part of that movement. And finally, so just another line of projects that we are doing. So we try to work on the ways to demonstrate the use of data in approaching the information that we have. So now we're working with Ilya Utechin, who is an anthropologist and the former professor of European University in St. Petersburg. So we're just as a pilot, we have started running a project that's called Russian Media Independence Detector Project. So the idea behind that for the first stage is rather simple. So we know that there is the perception of the changes in this censorship climate in Russian media. So they were called the Звенья гребаные цепи, the links of this of the chain, and because so we have lots of evidence from the sphere of journalists saying how they suffer this pressure and how it led to their media losing independence. But it hasn't been proven by the data, and for us it is an interesting task just to try to look at the data that we have and try to just to measure the level of independence of different outlets and to see how their internal policies changed in regard with covering the political career of Alexei Navalny. And we hope to present the results of that by the end of this month. So we will see some interesting patterns in the sense that we didn't expect them to see in the beginning, because when we started this project, we thought that we will see a picture of like silencing Alexei Navalny by the state-run media, and we see that it was not so just literally, because there was a period in the just from 2018 to 2021 where Alexei Navalny was able to pierce the bubble, and so we can see that there were the moments of silencing when the state-run media didn't react on what he and his team was doing, but when he managed to be visual and vocal, as it happened in the moment of his poisoning and in his return to Russia. The state-run media were forced to cover him at the same extent as independent media like Meduza and Novaya Gazeta, so they are similar in their pattern of covering him. But the difference is absolutely in the way they covered that, and in the wording and just in the sentiments that were attached to this. But it is still interesting to see that the nature of censorship in Russia changed throughout the different moments of even recent history, and maybe that will be instrumental for understanding the patterns of censorship in other undemocratic countries as well, because we see that it's not only silencing, but it's manipulation of information. It is the use of different keywords and attaching some sentiments, but still that so we hope to see a much more nuanced picture of what happened throughout the different segments of Russian media. So if I try to summarize what we do, so I would say that we just do several tasks. So we parse media from web. We double check some media with the Internet Archive, because we are extremely lucky to have the Internet Archive as a project that just preserved a lot of outlets and a lot of materials from different years that just we never thought of, and so we like to have them. Very often our task is just to clean the data that they have, because they were very good in collecting the data, but we see that they do not have enough resources to just clean that and to provide that to the users so that they can sort that and browse through this archive. Then sometimes we collect the archive from the editorial team, so in case they have that on their hard drives and servers. We now started scanning the paper issues, because we see that there were some important outlets, like for example Ruski Newsweek, so one of the most important political opinion newspaper magazine that existed in the early 2000s, that is unavailable now in the web. So then we clean and unify the text. I'll just a little bit more about it later. We translate all the text and we transcribe audio and video. So just to summarize, so our approach is we hope to create a comprehensive archive to collect everything that is just under the umbrella of independence media. We try to be data-driven in the sense that we unify the data, so we just spend a lot of effort trying to get rid of the differences in the format and layout of different media, so that all of the articles can be unified in their format, so that gives them the possibility to be used as a data set. So, and there is for us no difference whether you were working with a PDF or we're working from the old style website from 2001, or we're working from with the Media and Telegram channel. Our task is to unify that so that we have the contingency in the format of the media. We are scalable, so we create tools. So now we have the tools that can read PDFs and unify them. So we have the tool that can just parse different types of sites to create the unified text, and so we can share infrastructure if you are interested in parsing data from the web and just structuring it as a database. We try to be community focused. That's a tough task, but we still try to do that. So this February we ran our first hackathon with Novaya Gazeta over the Info in Teplitsa. So we started the first internship with universities and colleges in the US. So we just very looking forward to see the users, researchers, and just volunteers coming to our project. But still we have lots of challenges. So one, I'll just try to share some of them. So the first one is the notion of independence. Still, it is sometimes not easy to understand. So what can be called independent media, and we have lots of kind of discussion about that, because like if we're talking about I don't know, the Gazeta Zavtra, the newspaper that's just an ultra-conservative and just newspaper, so it seems to be independent, but it's very like pro-government, and sometimes it's more radical in its support than the state-run media. So whether it should be part of the archive or not, because in certain sense it's absolutely just part of another story here. We're still facing the variety of technological tasks, because so what we had in mind as an easy one, like that, well, let's collect everything and unify that, turns out to be a rather difficult task that asks for a lot of time and resources, and still sometimes it's difficult to predict how much time we will eventually spend to do just what we promised to our funders. And it's always like, you know, it's a little bit the work of in startup mode, because like we have this picture, but you never know how many efforts you need just to do before you can achieve those results, and so sometimes it's very difficult to clean the data. We have the issues with digitalization and legal issues, because like once again there is so we have some debates about whether we need to take into consideration the Russian legislation that is making us totally, as an organization, as persons, that makes us criminal, and so shall we still just take into consideration the copyright ideas of like just of the media outlets that remained in Russia, and well, that's still a discussion between us and our donors and partners. And the last one that I wanted to highlight, and I will be over here, is the problem of the manual destruction of the media, that we just, when we started the project, we didn't realize that it was going. For example, so here, so we are now working on a case study to understand the disappearing traces of LGBTQ plus community in Russia. So here you can see the archive of Sobaka magazine from their website. And if you see here, you will find that there was no July in 2006. So it seems that there was no issue of July 2006 in the archive, and there was a simple reason for that. Because there was a specialized issue that was titled "The End of Homosexualism," because there was just an idea that the Russia just is at the brink of the ending the stigmatization of LGBT people. It never happened, but what we see now that this the issue was manually deleted by the owners of the website from the archive. And we know that that's the thing that's happening just in many outlets in Russia, that now the holders of the archive, they go and manually delete their articles that are kind of deemed to be dangerous for them by the Russian legislation. And it's not an easy task to trace them, because like that is still, there's very just specific and directed manipulation that is hard to trace, and we still need to know what to do with that. Still, we are looking for new institutional partners, community, technological solutions, and we'll be happy to hear your insights and recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you very much for 3 fascinating talks. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I think this is a panel on archives in exile, but actually this panel has many questions that we saw along the conference. Sadly, I was informed that we will have to leave the room quite soon. There were certain technical issues, problems that were not solved, I guess. So I think what we'll do is we'll collect as many questions as we can. So please be brief. And then we'll give our presenters the opportunity to really try and address them. And if not, they can answer you, or we can continue that over coffee. And then we'll meet again for our round table in 496. Okay? So yeah, there's a certain change certain change of plans. Okay, so be concise and yeah, please run.
Thank you so much. I'll be brief. I have a question for Anastasia. Thank you. 2 questions. One, if you could elaborate on the lawsuit you mentioned with the collection that asked the materials back, and also not unrelated copyrights. When your archive collect collections, what is the state of the copyrights? Is it stays the owner's copyrights, that it belongs to the National Library? If you can elaborate.
It's also going to be brief, and it's kind of a follow-up on Ronnie's question to Anastasia. You mentioned there was this lawsuit that the Vienna Jewish community lost, and the Supreme Court ruled that the materials belong to Israel. But then you mentioned that we have projects in other Jewish communities, like in Latin America, of prompting them to collect and preserve and digitize, and then you can get copies. So I'm just wondering, is there a different policy of when the archive decides to collect the to take the archive and preserve it in Israel, or when the community is kind of has the rights to preserve its own? And I just wanted to say to Ilya, I think your project is just so important, and really appreciate it extremely.
Thank you all so much. It was amazing on so many levels, and I'm limiting myself really hard to. So my first question is to all 3 of you, really, and it has to do with digitization. How do you address the danger of post-truth? Right, once materials become digitized, they run the threat of being accused and labeled as fake. Once all the archives are digital, so that creates an opportunity to create fake histories and fake memorial records and fake independent anti-LGBTQ Russian newspapers from 2006 and whatnot. So I'm wondering about that. And I'm also wondering how do you deal with the reliability of digital technologies, storage and stuff like that, and how media changes, and the constant need to actually maintain all these servers and all that, all these places that hold this very valuable data. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your talks. I have two questions, one for Nikita and one for Ilya. So these are more general questions. So for Nikita, I would like to know if you see a connection between like the dismantling of Memorial and the resurrection of Stalin as a positive figure in Russia. I guess this is a yes, but could you maybe elaborate more on that? And for Ilya, I would like to hear your opinion about, you talked about the nuances of censorship in Russia. And I would like to know your opinion about like why did the Russian government prohibit Facebook and Instagram, but not YouTube? Because most of these journalists post on YouTube channels, right? Like Gagdieva, for example, and Dort. So I would like to know that.
We really have like, really short, we can address, if it's okay, we can move to 496 and continue the discussion there. We have time. So I will, so you know, maybe let's do that. You know what, let's do that. Let's all just pack our things, move to 496 and we'll hear the answers there for another like 15 minutes.